Item 4, discussion regarding residency distance requirements for sexual predators. And Attorney Russ Brown, are you going to handle this?
Sir, I believe Mr. Robbins is going to start as
okay.
given direction by council last meeting, and then I'll talk.
Chair, are we good to proceed?
Please.
All right. Council, thank you for allowing me to package this all together. You know, words can't begin to explain how important and sensitive these subjects are, how they're important in this community, and also how we go forward, especially with the influx of people that we're getting from out of state and everything that goes along with that. The biggest question is, what are we doing in Volusia County? We have sexual offender alerts, offender watch program apps, emergency notifications, iCrimeWatch.net. We do roundups, checks, residency checks, special operations, but in my opinion, we can always do more in this area. Going forward, we talked about it a little bit last meeting. I prepared this presentation. Hopefully we'll get through it pretty quick, called Safer Volusia. What I'll go over real quick is, what is Safer Volusia? And Chris, do we have that screen? Okay, there we go, perfect. Safer Volusia is an initiative that we're putting together to collectively communicating, strategizing, and collaborating with our community proactively to address and improve public safety. Its goal is to tailor common sense policy at a local level, provide funding that best serves and protects our residents and visitors instead of one-size-fits-all state legislation. Some of your questions that council had prior: how many offenders do we have? Is there a need for additional protections? What are the differences between sexual offender and predator? What is the legality of increased safety and residency measures? How much area will be taken away, and what are the exceptions? How will we enforce the proposed changes specifically in the parks? Starting off, what is a sexual offender? Staff has put out several emails with some definitions, but I'll go over it quickly for the public. Someone convicted of or has pled no contest guilty to a sex offense involving a minor. He or she has served the sanction imposed, whether it was a fine, incarceration, probation, and released. Some of those qualifying convictions for those adults are kidnapping, false imprisonment, luring, enticing a minor child when the offender is not the victim's parent or guardian, human trafficking, that's a big topic here as of recent, sexual battery, video voyeurism, and computer pornography, and a lot of that we're seeing as well. Transitioning to a sexual predator, person who repeatedly or who is a repeat sexual offender that uses physical violence in the commission of their offense. The state of Florida considers sexual predators that prey on children a serious threat to public safety and society, and it has been found that they are likely to repeat their offenses. What qualifies someone as a sexual predator? The high level of threat that a sexual predator presents to public safety and the long-term effects suffered by victims of sex offenses provide the state sufficient justification to implement strategies outlined in Florida state statute. Moving on to Volusia County statistics and map. According to Volusia Sheriff's Office and information online, we are a highly concentrated county in the state of Florida, with roughly a little over 1,200 registered sex offenders and over 100 sexual predators. Volusia County, like many other counties, has a high potential of sex offenders who become or they are among the transient population with no recorded or traceable address. Per the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the state of Florida, Florida is ranked 10th in the nation for sexual offender and predator residency per capita at 350 per 100,000 residents. Volusia County is, from the data that I've collected, within the top 5 ranked counties within the state for sexual offenders and predators, along with Pinellas, Hillsborough, Duval, and Orange County coming in at the top. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, March 2023, Florida was named the fastest growing state in America. Florida's rapid growing population comes in at roughly 22 million people, assuming constant rate of migration throughout the year. And Florida receives approximately 1,218 new residents per day. According to Growth Resource Management presentation last July, Volusia County's population as a whole grows about 6,000 new residents per year. And with our state's population surging, combined with our cities growing outward, the time for Volusia County, in my opinion, to be proactive in public safety is now. Now let's go ahead and look at these maps here. I got these maps to give folks an idea of the saturation that we have here and to paint the picture of what exactly we are dealing with here in the community. Outlined in blue are the offenders, in red, and some of those, or a lot of those, are overlapped with the blue, and the purple are red. and the purple designates multiple offender and predator residents in one location. And the green are the schools. Just for kicks, what I did is I zoomed in and I did it by region. That way the district members can also see what we're dealing with. They can see the schools. They can see the 1 mile radius of the school to get a full picture. I also included for that as well as the number of offenders or predators within a mile of each school in the county, and that information was provided by FDLE. Christopher, if we scroll down to 17, a couple proposals. One of them that we talked about, Proposal 1, is to formally establish a sex offender and predator section in Volusia County's Code of Ordinances, and title it as such. Listed below, and there's a Word document attached to this agenda item. It goes into detail each subsection. Now, I'm not smart enough to come up with those all on my own, but what I did was I went through the last 6-7 months and looked at a lot of aggressive counties in this area and took a little bit from each and compiled it into what you see here today. Anything from the legislative findings, legal definitions, prohibited residency, adoption of fee schedule, registration fees, something that we're not doing, re-registration fees, penalties for failure, annual review, property owners, a section for property owners to be encouraged to assist law enforcement officers in the protection of children, and then the application of ordinances, and then law enforcement options. Penalties, separate violations, remedies, and applicability. Some notable mentions. Almost all counties and municipalities in Florida have increased residency restrictions that enhance the overall well-being of a community, public safety, and public health. Volusia County does not. Ordinances were compiled from counties and municipalities around the state of Florida: Polk County, Lee, Brevard, St. Johns, Hillsborough, Orange, Miami-Dade. One of those main topics within this proposal is residency. Currently, state law prohibits persons convicted of certain sexual crimes to reside within 1,000 feet of child care facilities, parks, playgrounds, and schools. Today, I'm proposing a modest increase to the residency restrictions of convicted sexual offenders and predators to 1,500 feet, which is approximately a 6% residency reduction. And Mr. Brown will go over that here shortly. We ask ourselves why. Why was one of the questions. Society has determined that sexual offenders, repeat sexual offenders who use physical violence, and sexual offenders who prey on children are sexual predators present an extreme threat to public safety. And I'll go ahead and repeat that. An extreme threat to public safety. Sexual offenders are extremely likely to use physical violence and repeat their offenses, and most sexual offenders commit many offenses and have many more victims than are ever reported and are prosecuted for only a fraction of their crimes. This makes the cost of sexual offender victimization to society at large, while incalculable, clearly exhibited, and a drain on the resources of society. The sole intent of this article is to serve as Volusia County's compelling interest to promote, protect, and improve the health, safety, morals, and welfare of the citizens of Volusia County by creating areas around locations where children regularly congregate in concentrated numbers wherein certain sexual offenders and predators are prohibited from establishing temporary or permanent residences. We can go through this whole thing about exceptions and to answer questions. I know Don's got to have a bunch queued up, but this would only apply to new sexual offenders or sexual offenders that would be moving or losing their lease, anything to that nature. The ones that are currently live where they're at, they are there to stay until something changes. This would not affect them. From here, what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Russ. What I will ask from the council, if we can let Mr. Brown do his presentation, I'll pick it up from there if we can just hold all of our questions to the end. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. How's it goes? Good evening, Mr. Chair. Russ Brown, Deputy County Attorney. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Just real briefly, with me is Ms. Maureen Secor from our office. You also have Mr. Brandon Barnett from IT office, who generated the GIS data that you'll be looking at. So if you have any technical questions about the logarithms, different things like that, that he was able to pull the data, I'm going to defer to him and with him as a member of his staff. So we were directed to come back in the June meeting by council with data showing the impact of increasing the distance from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet from the current resident restriction in state law for schools, child care facilities, playgrounds, and parks for sexual predators. So that's what the information that you have that we're going to show you. This is a GIS data. It's kind of hard to see. We'll go through in the next 3 slides how they break down the formula. The 1,000 feet is the county buffer in the unincorporated area. Then you see in the red, if you went to an additional 500 feet, that's the 1,500 you see right there. And then in the, I think that's maroon maybe, whatever that fuchsia, whatever that color is the cities and the incorporated and the effect. But breaking that down, Mr. Barnett and his staff is able to, pulling from different property appraisers data, I believe, they work with the sheriff's office when they get somebody that's registered, if they have a question, so they know where they can go to have a residence once they get out and have this conviction. And so you run the numbers and you can see no exclusion, you can see city versus unincorporated, no exclusions, meaning there's no exclusions how many dwellings in the city and the unincorporated are available. For our purposes, as Mr. Robbins referred to, the approximately 6%, that's the one that is right here in the middle that we're talking about today that he mentioned with the 6.1, almost 6%. So that's the one for that. So if you go to 1,500, it decreases the amount of dwellings, the building count, approximately 6.1% total in the county. I'm trying to hit clear here. Get this off. Moving on, some additional for school. If you did a school increase only, what that looks like for your dwelling counts going down. And then moving on, you can see jurisdictionally throughout the county, there's approximately, I think there's only 2, I think at De Leon Springs and Pearson, if I remember correctly, the only 2 that don't have some form of enhanced residency registration residency living requirement. Pretty much everybody else in the county does. You can see someone as high as 2,500 feet, depending on the different categories. And so I think that concludes my part, and then I'll be happy to answer questions at the end.
Thank you, Russ. Moving on to proposal 2, going forward, is adding definitions and possibly adopt ordinance section 8260 or park rules and usage. There's some definitions there that cover the whole basis and the proposal. For the language, obviously we're going to have a definition for designated children's play area. Some sample language that I got from other municipalities and jurisdictions. No adult 18 years or older shall enter or remain in designated child play area unless the adult, guardian, sibling, caretaker, parent, babysitter, daycare provider, teacher, or supervising and or accompanying children who are utilizing the designated children's play area. No person shall conduct an activity within a county park that is prohibited, restricted, or regulated by posted signage. To the extent permitted by law, no person shall loiter in and around any park areas, including but not limited to restrooms, dressing rooms, bathhouses, picnic shelters, wooded areas, natural and undeveloped areas. When it comes down to enforcement, that was a big question that not only I had, but a lot of other folks up here had as well. In my first recommendation, and the way we would do it after consulting with our legal, is to kind of mirror our section 78-4 with our trespass warnings on public property. With that being said, there's an appeal process for it, and that's pretty much the person's day in court where a magistrate is hired. But my recommendations for that, in terms of enforcement, we don't want anybody innocent, obviously going to jail or getting in trouble for this. So my first inclination or my first suggestion or interaction would be education. We have education through signage. We have education through community policing if they do get contact or if there's a complaint made or observed. And it can constitute a field interview card and or trespass warning or nothing. It's totally up to the discretion of the officer. Second interaction can constitute a warning or an arrest based on the prior documented interaction and not properly or non-properly posted signage identifying designated child's play area must be present. Like I said, any enforcement action must be officer discretion. So what are the benefits? We think a lot of this to be self-explanatory, but These are some of the benefits that I came up with to address some of the questions from I had very few of the public. Insurance equipment is properly used according to the age and kept free from damage. Decrease in risk, liability, and injury due to improper use. Public health. You know, as a police officer in Daytona Beach, a lot of our parks, water pads, jungle gyms, all that stuff, there's a public health issue with the amount of transient population, and I know it's also present in an unincorporated Volusia or anywhere there's a park countywide. We do deal with a portion of that. So public health deters camping, loitering, hygiene issues associated with our growing indigent population. Crime reduction deters loitering, crimes of opportunity, drug dealing, and child grooming. In terms of saving tax dollars, there is a portion of this fixing broken equipment for misuse and abuse, claims and payouts, cleaning and ground maintenance services, calls for service for police, fire, EMS, and other emergency services. And one of the most important things here is gives law enforcement an additional tool to identify threats to society while promoting positive police interactions and community policing. Gives parents and families peace of mind, and it lets our kids be kids. And overall, it protects and enhances the overall public safety of Volusia County. For the third proposal that we had talked about for cameras in our parks and playgrounds, my proposal is pretty simple. For us to coordinate and collaborate with the Sheriff's Office. I received an email today that I forwarded to the County Manager, giving some rough pricing on what it's going to be. But most importantly, how are we going to pay for it? You know, we talk about that a lot. I reviewed several things, and I made an echo suggestion for one thing, and I received a couple emails inquiring about it, and it's something that I would like towards the end, and I'll put it in a motion form because of just some verbiage that I found on page 3 of the guidebook that I'd like to go over. But identifying existing parks and ranks them according to crime statistics that we get from our Sheriff's Office, and also too possibly looking at municipalities having a buy-in option if they wanted to link in with our system. We got a wide range of community support. I put this out countywide on email. Countywide on social media. It's reached thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Overwhelming support. Of course, you always have your handful of folks against certain things. But in terms of professional support, Volusia Sheriff's Office, the State Attorney, R.J. Larissa, the City of South Daytona, City of New Smyrna Beach, City of Edgewater Police, City of Port Orange Police, and City of Ormond Beach Police. And I think that says a lot. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, members of the community, my colleagues, I believe these proposals check all the boxes. They address the present and they prepare us for the future. If adopted, they also send a clear message that public safety is not just #1 in our community, but communities across the state because it's being used everywhere. The proposals present are modest compared to many others around the state. With that being said, it lays the groundwork and at the same time leaves room to adjust as we go and our populations increase. Despite many different points that we may hear, I think we need to keep in mind that we are not a judge and a jury. And something that we have to remember as well is that we're not dealing with jaywalking violations. We are dealing with possible people that were convicted by a jury, their peers, or pled due to substantial evidence against them. What we cannot lose focus of is that these individuals, in some form or fashion, have preyed on our most vulnerable and most innocent in our society. They made that choice. They made that decision, and they have to live with the laws and the repercussions we as society feels acceptable. Unfortunately, the victims and the future victims didn't have a choice, and they must live with what happened to them forever. Anyone who may be on the fence, I would like you to consider one thing. What if it was your child? What if it was your grandchild, your daughter, or your son? Would we maybe be having this conversation? Council, we're all grown-ups. We all know that there's no wrong time to do the right thing. Council, my ask is this. Don't support me or don't support this for me being passionate. Support this for the 1,200 red and blue dots that we saw earlier on the map within the presentation. Support this for every child and grandchild. And lastly, support this for the victims. And Chairman, I can go ahead and make a motion now for discussion, if you'd like.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve both proposals, 1 and 2, which gives staff the ability to come back with language to adopt.
Motion to approve proposals 1 and 2, and then staff will bring back language to adopt.
Second.
Motion was by Robbins, second by Matt Reinhardt. And questions for, did you have a question or is it? Okay. David Santiago.
For staff. Russ, you mentioned the 6% thing, the 6% decrease in availability. What's the number now? I mean, we're going from...
Yes, sir. Let me pull that slide up.
Yeah, I believe the current, with current restrictions is 83%. Go one more.
Can you use the mic?
Oh, I apologize. So if you look at the bottom there, current restrictions based on current exclusions, approximately 86.5% of dwellings in this analysis are already excluded. So this would exclude an additional 6%.
Thank you.
Questions, Don Dempsey?
This is for Russ. Russ, as you recall, we recently had a phone conference with a sex offender, sex predator probation officer, and we've also had input from another probation officer during another meeting about the housing crisis they're having with drug court. And in both of those meetings, it was revealed that if this were to pass, this is not just a 6% minuscule reduction. This would effectively wipe out the entire west side of Volusia County as being available for housing for sex offenders, right?
So the officer on the phone indicated that there were 3 main places where individuals as an offender or predator live, that landlords will take them in, and the information on the phone that he indicated was that 2 of those 3, if it increases to 500, would no longer fall within, they would be excluded.
Okay. And just correct me if I'm wrong during this meeting, because they were unable to be here tonight, but basically the essence of their conversation was that, yeah, you might say it only reduces it by 6%, but when you go to fill out an application for an apartment, I mean, if you think bad credit is going to keep you out of that apartment complex, let alone being a sex offender, that effectively wipes out, nobody is going to rent to a sex offender. So is it fair to say, Russ, there's only 3 people in the county, 3 landlords in the county who are willing to even rent to sex offenders, correct?
That's what the probation officer said, sir.
He would know, right? I mean...
Yes, sir. I'm just saying, it's not me. I don't deal with that. I just heard him what he said on the phone. It's not my... That's all I'm saying is I heard him say it.
Do you have any reason to doubt him?
Oh, no, not at all.
Oh, okay. So the essence of that conversation was, if this passes, this is not just a 6% reduction in housing. This wipes out the entire west side, correct?
He indicated that 2 of the 3 that currently are used that allow offenders or predators to live there would be excluded with this additional 500 feet. That's what he said.
Right. Because there's bus stops everywhere, there's parks everywhere, and 500 feet may seem insignificant to a lot of people, but it effectively wipes out the whole west side. Of those 3 landlords who are willing to rent to sex offenders, the biggest 2 were eliminated, correct?
That's what he said, yes, sir.
Right, and so the only remaining person would not even be able to house sex offenders. I mean, they have very limited space, correct?
Who had limited space?
Only one who's not going to be affected by this 500-foot expansion.
Well, I think the concern we have is, I don't want to speak for the
the probation officer. We just don't have that personal knowledge. We can look at the total available housing stock, and I think the point you're making, Mr. Dempsey, is, well, it's fine to look at the housing stock, but what about the ability of those folks to rent in those homes? That the information you're relying on says it's actually a smaller pool, is what I'm hearing you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't go to.
We just don't have the personal knowledge to know about.
Right, that's all I'm saying is I don't know. I don't have the personal knowledge. I did hear him on the phone call say 2 of the 3 would be eliminated, but I don't know about the last one and how many are available.
Okay, and then what happens once this person has nowhere to go? Then they become homeless, correct?
That's what the probation officer said, yes, sir.
Again, we have no reason to doubt this person.
Oh,
right?
no, sir. I'm just saying I don't have
researching.
any. Yes, sir, Mr. Dempsey. I'm not saying that I have any reason to doubt. I'm just saying I don't have any direct knowledge. I don't deal with that. I just remember what the probation officer
Well,
said.
I just want to be very clear
Yes.
here, regardless of anybody. We're not attacking the credibility of anybody, but I'm only going to speak to what we have personal knowledge about. I mean, we can confirm what we've been told, but I can't say one thing has more credibility than the other.
Yep, point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, what's your point?
Maybe to bring fluidity to this, Mr. Dempsey, maybe you can just speak to what you heard from that meeting.
Okay, if you'll let me.
Absolutely, and because I have no reason to doubt you.
Okay.
And that way we can speak with him on facts that he knows.
I mean,
Yes, sir. Well, and I'd say I heard the conversation. I confirmed what he said. I just wanted to say I don't know about the other.
And I think the point that I'm making is that we have no reason to disbelieve you. And it's not, you don't have to prove to a jury. If you're saying it, I believe that you heard it. I think my colleagues feel the same.
well, I just want to make
Okay.
sure that I'm getting the confirmation from, because this is a question and answer thing, so I don't want to just give a dissertation up here. I want to make sure that Russ, ratifies what I'm saying is true and correct.
Let's clear up the point of order. It's well taken. It's because you are willing to do that, just speak from your knowledge. And then,
Okay.
if you would, when you're done, I have some questions for you too, because I think we need to hear this.
Okay, instead of this dissertation back and forth with Russ, please correct me if I'm wrong or if I misstate anything that came out of our meeting with the probation officer. What happens is that once these people become homeless, they have nowhere to go. Okay, Danny, you'd said law enforcement does residency checks. That's great. If a registered sex offender leaves his dwelling for more than 3 days, he has to re-register and say where he's going to be. But if they're homeless, they go live in the woods and they're not tracked. Nobody knows where they are and where they're hanging out. There's no way, if you want to keep track of these people, leave it the way it is. Let them have housing. Don't wipe out all their housing and then they become homeless. If they're born and raised in DeLand and their family's in DeLand, guess what? They're coming back to DeLand. So by creating this 500-foot expansion, you may think you're helping society, but you're actually hurting it because you're going to force these people who want to live in DeLand, want to live on the west side, to have no place to go, and then they're going to live in the woods. And then we really don't know where they are. So it's actually hurting things. That's why I'm so adamantly against this. And correct? Am I wrong in any of that
That's
I
what he
said?
said. Yes, sir.
Right. So that's why I'm against this. But okay, thank you for letting me go straight to the point. Thanks.
Jake Johansson.
Yeah, I happened to visit one of the places where there's multiple. It's close to an area where children frequent, and it's in front of a small subdivision. So those folks are all pretty concerned. But I see your point that if we increase it, that whole shebang goes away, and now we got, I think last time I heard was about 15 people on the road. So so that concerns me. Also, I'm a less government, less regulation kind of guy, and here we are with two proposals to increase spending, increase camera usage, decrease the ability for some people to conduct activity in parks that are, it says no adult. It doesn't say no offender. It doesn't say no predator. It says no adult. So I brought that up before when Keith Chester was here. You know, adults and people 18 and 19 years old occasionally would like to swing on a swing set or use an area that may be frequented with children under 18. So there's a couple of scenarios where I think this would restrict. I appreciate, excuse me, Danny's conversation about the education piece first. My question is do our police officers and our deputies are they willing to do that stepped escalation? I don't think we have a deputy here to talk about that. Number one, and number two, for all these cameras in proposal 2 that we may want to put out, who's going to monitor those? Proposal 3, who's going to monitor those? Anybody?
I can answer that.
Yeah, please.
Chairman, is that okay? I didn't get to my motion on proposal 3 for that. I know I'm going to be getting into a statement portion of this. If we concluded the question, I can go ahead and move on. But I don't want to cut you off, Jeff.
No, yeah, I have some questions. He had a question, but it's really for Danny, right? But that's in his next proposal,
for proposal 3, which is the next one.
So to answer you, Mr. Johansson,
I want to wait. Yeah, it's your prerogative. You want to wait till 3?
Get it out of the way. This is on a reactionary base, just like your Axon cameras. To pay somebody or staff monitoring cameras would be nuts, in my opinion. Although, you know, we would probably like that, but that's not what I'm proposing. Nonetheless, beyond reactionary, if there's a call for service, if there's a crime, if there's an abduction, if there's a criminal mischief, if there's anything that constitutes or a complaint, it's going to be complaint-based, where we would go in and look at it, time frame it. That way we're able to direct our resources properly and move forward with a victim or whatnot. So,
thanks. Thank you. Don, rather than ask staff, I need to ask you, because you're the one that talked to these parole officers, and you're the one, I believe, with experience. In reality, this should be such a simple issue that, because we're all law and order guys. We all care about our children. We care about the children of the community, and so this should be a slam dunk. Yeah, do it. But I'm worried about the unintended consequences, and I believe that's what you're worried about too. So I really have 2 questions. One is, do you see a difference in how this would affect offenders and predators? I've received letters that say exactly what you say from family members of people that are on the offender list. And the unintended consequences for me is that right now they can be tracked. And if we take away where I live in West Volusia, every single place they could live, they are going to go live in the woods, and I don't know where they are. They might be right next to a playground, and I don't know that. Right now we do, and we can track it, so it makes it's not quite as black and white. As much as I wish it was, it's not. So 2 questions. What is the difference that you see in the real world between offenders and predators? Because I would say predator, lock them away. Even with offenders, I want to say, well, who cares if they can't find a place to live? But we have to care because it could be worse. We could make it worse. Is that? I think that's what you're saying.
Well, you gotta. Well, Danny, great job on it. Go ahead. You want to say something?
I think we're getting into debate, Chair. I think we're
asking him questions.
I know, but how does council feel? Should we move forward or continue to ask each other questions and debate it out, or I don't know. I want to do what's good for everybody so we can come to a conclusion.
I thought he was asking the question at the end, though. You got to it long, but you asked the question. So I'm interested in the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
The difference between predators and offenders, well, there's obviously and correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but the probation officer that we spoke with, I think he supervised over 100 sex offenders. I think there were only 5 predators. He said this would not affect the predators so much because they live in hotels typically.
That's what he said, yes, sir.
Yes, and the offenders are obviously, or there's much more of them because Danny's presentation up there distinguishing the two is right on point. I don't know if you have it up here or not, but
I'm pulling it up.
I mean, predators are deemed obviously as the more dangerous people of the two. In my experience, well, I don't know. I mean,
Chairman, I thought the question from you, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the question for you, Mr. Dempsey, was, is this going to make it more difficult for the police to track these individuals because they'll have fewer places to live? Was that the question?
Making it worse.
yes, only because if they're declared homeless, then all they have to do is check in once a month, but law enforcement has nowhere to go to check on them. Just like Danny's former law enforcement, he'll tell you, they do these residency checks. They make sure that they are where they're supposed to be, and if they're gone for more than 3 days, they get violated, and then they go to prison. I've seen that happen just recently. I've seen a guy get 10 years, not because of what he did to a child, but because he violated the residency restriction. So you just have to understand that we want to know where they are. We don't want to create an environment where they're all homeless and then you can't track them. And we're fortunate enough to have somebody who's nice enough to house these people, which my understanding is it's at $500 a month rent. So, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, Russ, I'm just getting...
You did say that, yes, sir.
So, I mean, these people, imagine this now, there's people getting out of, or going into society on probation who can have affordable housing, have a reasonable chance of getting a job. It's hard for them to even get a job, let alone being able to afford housing. And now we're going to take away the affordable housing, make them live out in the woods, basically. And I think it's just creating a more dangerous environment.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Robbins.
And Don, don't get me wrong, all those are valid concerns, but there was a PDF attached to the agenda item that can answer a lot of the questions that you're asking for council on the exceptions to this. This would not instantly, for instance, like the arm brace rule that came out, the ATF, where now millions of Americans are now guilty of a crime because they have one of these things. This doesn't do that to existing sexual offenders or predators. It doesn't rip them out of their homes. It doesn't put them on the street. And something to keep in mind with this is they have to have a job. They have to have a residency. Because if they don't, they do go to jail. And name one person, you'll see this right here is all the people that want to go spend their day in jail or night in jail or get violated. So these people, if you look, they set up residency for a very, very, very long time. For some of the reasons that you're saying. Housing does become scarce, but this is unincorporated Volusia. We have a lot of room, and there's a lot of growth that could potentially happen. And we're not the first people that are talking or thinking about this. And I'd be lying here, too, to say that if I'm a bleeding heart about it. But people have to have these responsibilities, in my opinion. But I'm getting into debate. I don't have any other questions. I was just responding to... and kind of defusing that. But if you look at, council, if you look at the PDF, go to Section 4, Prohibited Residences of Sexual Offenders and Residency, items D1, it kind of outlines that these people are not going to be put out on the street. It limits new people, new offenders that come into the area, or new offenders where their residency restriction would be limited. And if the other ones got evicted or moved for whatever reason. But there has to be some accountability and responsibility for their actions as well.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. Don, I think you've said it more than once, but I want to make sure I'm clear of what you said. During your conversation with this probation officer, I think you said, did he indicate to you that he believed that this would cause more homelessness in our community amongst these individuals?
Yes, they would be basically rendered homeless because I think it would take away, would it be close to 100 residents between the two?
I don't remember that number, sir. I just remember him saying 2 of the 3 known places where they are allowed to have a tenancy now would be taken away, according to this probation officer.
For new registrants.
But those are multifamily dwellings, is what he indicated.
Yeah, and I understand Danny's point for new offenders that are looking for a place to live. But Russ, one more question for you. I know there's the two classifications, and I'm trying to go back to my old legislative days, but we only have the predator and we have the offender, right? I don't recall, and I think the answer is no, but are there any other ways that we can drill down or define that, let's say, multiple layers within that? And does that make sense?
No, sir. I'm sorry.
The degree, yeah. So here's what I remember from my years. I mean, somebody can be classified as an offender for what some would consider very minor offenses, right? As an offender. You have the Romeo and Juliet issue, right? Where the 18-year-old was with the 17-year-old, right? And, is that person dangerous to society? I don't know. I think 2 teenagers fell in love and one happened to be a minor, right? Under the law. And somebody like that can be classified as an offender, right? So that's always been a problem for me because I know it exists for real. I've met people where that exists. And some of them are married, been married 20, 30 years. So my question is, and again, I think the answer is no, Russ, I hate to put you on the spot, but do we know if there's a way that we could have subcategories of offenders, meaning the degree of the offense that they got classified as an offender?
So my understanding is kind of your predator kind of takes care of that in a general sense because it's about a repeat sexual offender, a sexual offender who has used physical violence, or a sexual offender who preys on children. That's generally the subset of an offender that's been further classified, if you will.
To the predator.
Yes, sir. And so the offender is more about being convicted of, committing, or attempting, soliciting, conspiring to commit a variety of different types of criminal offenses. You mentioned about, including but not limited to, like sexual misconduct, human trafficking, sexual battery, sexual activity with a minor. You were talking about that Romeo and Juliet. Lewd or lascivious battery, molestation, child pornography, computer porn, child pornography, traveling to meet a minor. A lot of a broader umbrella, if you will, and then the predator is a subset for the more dangerous.
So we only have the 2 categories, right, to work with.
Yes, sir.
And then my other question would be, Danny's proposed ordinance change, could that be just applied, if the council so choose, to just predators?
That was the direction of council back in June, was to bring it back for predators
only. But the proposal in front of us includes both.
The agenda item was, as council directed in June, to bring back increasing from 1,000 to 1,500 for sexual predators. I believe Mr. Robbins, at the direction that council gave him last meeting, is requesting you to reconsider that.
Gotcha. Okay, because it has both. His proposal has both, is what I mean.
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have right now. Just looking to see what else others say.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair. And I was just going to point that out. There are the only 2 distinctions: predator and offender. There's actually a third, but when dealing with sexual predators, it's Jimmy Rice Act, but those individuals are involuntarily incarcerated. They're your severe. They're with mental issues as well. But those are not something we're going to discuss today. But there are actually 3, but there is no differential between the 2, and that's all.
Councilman Dempsey.
Yeah, Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir.
Exercise time. So in your preparation for this presentation, have you received any data or statistics about how expanding residency restrictions by 500 feet cuts down on child molestation?
I believe council saw it. Oh, cuts down on child molestation.
Yeah, we know it's going to cut down on where people can live. But I mean, is there any correlation between 500 feet and less kids getting molested? Or is this conjecture?
I don't have any information. I wasn't given any data to support that.
Did we get any data on how many kids are abducted from playgrounds and bus stops and are molested in this county?
I don't have any data.
Okay. Isn't it true?
We'd be happy to get that information.
Right.
If there's any questions you have, we can ask the sheriff's office for that information.
Well,
can
I
ask them
thought
to
we
run the
did
report.
ask for it before, and we didn't receive anything. We brought it up last time for them to give us any type of examples. 33 years of doing this, I don't recall prosecuting and defending these cases. I don't ever recall a child being abducted from a bus stop or a playground. Isn't it true that, based on what your experience is in your research, that all this stuff happens within the home,
Mr. Dempsey, I can't-
overwhelming majority of the times?
I can't testify to that, sir.
Okay, okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Vice Chair Robbins.
What I can say, and I'll ask this again, is the fact that Don, I'm going to wait for comments because I'm going to make a comment. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll open it up to debate. I think we just had a healthy debate, but is there anyone else that wants to comment on it before Danny does? Jake, are you getting ready?
You mean for debate?
For debate on just proposals 1 and 2. I'll give you a second, Dan. In fact, right now, sum up quickly what proposal 1 and 2 are, so we can focus the debate just to that, because then you're going to bring up 3, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Don, real quick, can you refresh my memory on your last 2 questions that you had asked? You had asked one about how many cases, and then...
Yeah, has there been any cases given, because I believe we asked for this last time, some example of where a child was abducted from either a bus stop or a playground?
What was your third question? What was your last question after that? You had one more?
Isn't it true that the overwhelming majority of these cases happen within the family home amongst family members?
Okay, I can answer that when we're ready to debate.
Okay.
Okay. Before you, unless it's going to throw off your thinking process, just tell us quickly what 1 and 2 is, so we can limit the debate to that.
Chairman, the debate should be limited to the residency restrictions of both offender and predator, because that data was given by the attorneys, and also to the adoption of the ordinance to establish designated children play areas.
Okay, thank you.
So just for clarification, so it's increasing from 1,000 to 1,500 in the
Right.
unincorporated for offenders and predators is the motion, and then the adoption of the registration fees. And one thing I wanted to just point out is that if you do adopt the registration fees, we had talked about it, we highly recommend that we need to do an administrative fee study to support any fees that we would pass on to.
Right.
So things may, depending on council's direction, if you vote to do that, we would bring it back at piecemeal as those things become.
Right, so, Council, I had provided all this information in that proposal of the subsections within this big ordinance section, as well as the PDF that had all the information in it, which possibly could answer or have answered a lot of questions. But we talk about how many cases with this in these instances. And something you have to remember is that's why these laws are in place, to deter cases from happening. We're not dealing with jaywalkers here. At some point, they were convicted by a jury of their peers through our legal system, or have pled because there was enough evidence that they thought that they made that choice to plea to the crime that they were accused of. We talk about whether or not these crimes are committed by people that they know are family. The majority of them are, yes, anywhere from 80, 85%, sometimes 90%, depending on what source or what side of the fence the source is on that wants to talk about this. With that being said, there's anywhere from 20% of people in these increased residency restrictions and policy that we're looking to adopt represents those 20% of people that are not known to society, not known by the victim. Does that make sense? There's 20% roughly that are not known by their aggressor or the assailant or the criminal. these things represent that and represent them. To me, this is a no-brainer, and we're trying to be the judge and the jury, and this question is simple. Do we want to increase the protection of our families and residences, and our families, our residences, and the tourists that we depend on to help clean up our county? This is a problem. These people committed sometimes heinous crimes to victims that don't have a choice, that have to live with this forever. Life is about choices. We all know that. They made that choice. Why are the taxpayers, the children, and the families have to pay for the crimes that they didn't commit? Why? If you're asking for sympathy for me over 500 feet, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to get it. I'm sorry. To me, this is common sense legislation. This is modest, a modest ask compared to the rest of almost the rest of the state of Florida. If you look at the municipalities and if you look at the counties, modest. And I know it's a sensitive subject, and we want to do what's right. I'll say it again. We'd be ripping the hinges off of hell if it was one of our kids that this happened, or one of that 20%. And I guarantee you, there's 7 of us up here, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. That's all I got.
David, before I call on you, we're at debate now. Can you use the timer as we talk? Councilman Santiago.
Yeah, I think Danny went like 5 minutes, 5 seconds. So. Danny, I appreciate your work on this. Obviously, you spent a lot of time on it, so I respect that. And, you know, from the beginning of the conversation, I was like, I'm on board. Right? Obviously, when you get into the details, things start to open up. And I want to still try to get there. This motion before us is to come back with an ordinance. Am I correct? So we're not voting on an ordinance today.
Given direction to staff, sir.
To prepare an ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And then we could debate that ordinance and decide on that ordinance.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that pulls me back is I want to make sure we don't create any unintended consequences. Right? And you can't always identify all of them. So that's what's kind of holding me a little bit, or making me concerned, I should say. I wonder, Danny, I'm going to try to pull up one of your page playbooks, is the art of that deal, right, to make the deal. Since this is just sending it back to staff to bring back to us, I'm interested to see if the homes that are currently residencies for these individuals, those locations, 5 I think were identified, that are, I thought it was a total of 5 in the county, where they kind of sort of reside in, mostly. The conversation you all had.
What I heard from the gentleman was 3 multifamily dwelling units,
okay.
and
So,
2 would be affected by the additional 5.
So what I would like to see, and I think I could support this to go to the next step, if maybe staff can do some additional analysis on the graphing, the mapping system, find out where those locations are. Right, because it seems like we got some favorable landlords, and see what that number would be. What change would it make? Would it make it 2,300? I think we're trying to go to 2,000. What's the total? 1,500? Yeah. Would it make it 1,400? 1,450? I don't know the answer to that. To allow for an area that historically has already been serving these folks, to continue to serve them as people come and go. New people could potentially still go there. The community around it already is accustomed to knowing that there are individuals that live in these neighborhoods. I just like to know the data to see if we can identify those homes. And maybe that brings me able to cross that bridge. Danny, you understand where I'm going, Danny? I'm not saying that's where I'm going to be, but that would help me to say, give me that information when we come back, and that might help me vote yes. But if you're okay with them working on that, amending your motion just to work on it, I'd vote for your motion today.
Councilman Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be under my 5 minutes, I believe, but Councilman Santiago, one of my favorite things about serving with you is that you are a consensus builder. And when you're not there, quite there with something, I'm learning from you how you talk about what you need to try to get there and make, you know, maybe both sides happy. And it's a great art, and I appreciate it. And to Vice Chair Robbins, I want to publicly commend you for the homework and the hard work you did. And I learned something from you tonight. When I brought up my beach issue, I got gavelled, not really gavelled down, but told to be quiet at 10 minutes. Man, I'm just going to be part of the presentation. There's no time limit. You were talking, and I looked up, and I was like, where's the time, moron? What's going on here? And I said, Vice Chair is part of the presentation. That's what I'll do from now on. You know, there's a way to skin this, and I'll become part of the presentation. Really, it was brilliant. And I just got to tell you, I have no sympathy and zero empathy for sexual offenders or predators. And I get where you're coming with this. But then Don Dempsey, Councilman Dempsey, speaks up. And he's lived this both sides as a prosecutor and a defender. And when I hear him ask that question, which it makes me think, are we going to put our residents in a more unsafe environment because we don't know where they are? We know where they are for the most part now, but if we implement something and now they can't check in regularly with the police, that's concerning to me. And I think it's a valid point, Don. So I like where David Santiago is going with this, about sending this back to staff and maybe tweaking those numbers a little bit, so that we have a better understanding and control of where these individuals are residing. I think I could go along with you on that, Councilman. Thank you.
Councilman Dempsey.
I think the one thing, Danny, first of all, you know I have all the love in the world for you, bud, and you definitely did your homework on this. And your position, I would say, is the majority position, because I've been dealing with...
Excuse me 1 second. You can't hear him? Okay.
Because I've been dealing with prosecutors now for the last 30 years. I was a prosecutor for 3 years, did this, and I've been doing defense for 30 now. And you have the majority view. And it's politically correct to be tough on sex offenders. I get it. The sex offender lobby in Tallahassee is not very strong. So it's low-hanging fruit politically to just pound the sex offenders. We hate the golden rule that you just, which is never used in the courtrooms, but put yourself in the place of the victim, which, I get it. If that was my 6-year-old daughter, I'd want to kill somebody if they did that to my daughter. But you have to understand, these cases have all been filtered through the courts. During the confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh and other Supreme Court judges, we always hear rhetoric. We don't want judges who legislate from the bench. But yet here we are, a legislative body, trying to judge where people can live. We need to let the legislature do their own thing. They said they saw fit for 1,000 feet. I don't think it's the intention of the legislature to wipe out an entire half of a county from people being able to reside. I can assure you from 33 years of doing this, I believe the truly guilty people are already in prison. The cases where there's a confession, the cases where there's DNA evidence, the cases where there's physical evidence, those people aren't walking the streets. Those people are in prison. These are the gray area cases. Because of minimum mandatories, and this is why I ran for state attorney, one of the reasons why I ran for state attorney 2 years ago, because I am so passionate about this fallacy in our legal system. Everybody thinks minimum mandatories are great. Life in prison, you touch a kid under 12, life in prison, that sounds great. And I agree with that as a parent. But when you're the person staring down the barrel of the accusation, Jeff, I don't like you, and so I'll invite you to my house and I'll accuse you of doing something to my 6-year-old, just touching her inappropriately. Your options are basically go to trial or take the state's offer. And I always equate this to Russian roulette. We all know what that is, and none of us would play Russian roulette for $1 million. But basically, when you go to trial, on a case like that, you're betting your life. None of us would play Russian roulette, even though there's a 5 in 6 chance you're going to win. You'll probably win, but none of us would play that game for $1 million. When you're accused of that and you're given the option of either go to trial, pull the trigger, see what a jury's going to do, you'll probably win, but there's that 1 in 6 chance you're going to get a bad jury, you're going to lose and spend the rest of your life in prison, getting beat up by the guards, and God knows what else by the inmates, okay? Or we'll give you sex offender probation. You go ahead and walk the streets as a sex offender. Now, so these people that go to prison don't go to prison because they molested a child. They go to prison because they lived within 1,500 feet of a bus stop or a park. There's so many, I can't tell you how many times people end up getting imprisoned because of smoking dope while they're on sex offender probation, because innocuous stuff. What they're on for is an egregious allegation, but they're on probation because the courts have seen fit that these people, look, the state and the courts have seen fit that this person can walk the streets. So now who are we to create an environment where they have to live in the woods once the courts have decided they're free to walk the streets amongst us? Okay? That's what I think is improper, is that we're basically pushing ourselves into that realm of doing more than what the judges have already deemed to be appropriate. Is that we're forcing these people who grew up here on the west side of the county to spend the rest of their life living in the woods in order to stay where they grew up, the place that they know. And the sum total of this, an article came out, I don't know if Sheldon's here or not, but when I was running for state attorney 2 years ago, there was an article that came out about the Florida's prison boom. Yeah, 40 seconds. And this is a statistic that should concern you, is that Florida jails more people per capita than any country in the world. Okay? So literally, Floridians are the worst people on the face of the earth, or we're having a problem with mass incarceration. And all this is going to do is further add to this mass incarceration. It's rampant, this whole thing. Let's get the sex offenders. Let's lynch them. The pitchforks, the torches, let's get them. It's almost like the Salem witch trials. I mean, there comes a point that these are human beings. And if the judges see fit for them to walk the streets, then I think they should live under a house and not in the woods. Thank you.
Vice Chair Robbins?
Thank you. And Don, I get it, or at least I'm trying to process that. But at the same time, you are a defense attorney. You've been doing this a long time. But I was a cop in Daytona Beach, and I did this, and I encountered a lot of this for a long time as well. And your job is to create doubt. And you do a good job. If I need an attorney, I'd probably use you, Don. That should say something.
Not for this crime, though.
Yeah. But if this was so important, and I want everybody to pay attention, if this was so important, if these residency issues were so important to our judicial system or our probation officers, why aren't they here providing their case? Everybody has known about this. You talk to them, why aren't they here? That's number one. Number two, reducing it any more defeats the purpose. This is putting down our foot. This is putting, regardless of what is said or opposition, this is putting our children in this community first and letting people know of what we expect and how we expect it. This is a society issue. Society has adopted this and made this or see fit. We're not breaking the mold here. Look at us. This is just one area that we are just ridiculously behind in. Just saying the obvious. If we are going to be putting our residents in a situation or risk, my question is this, and then I'm done. Why did the sheriff, 40 plus years in law enforcement, why did the state attorney's office, the elected state attorney, why did they write support letters? Why did the city of Port Orange, their law enforcement, he's come up from South Florida, Miami, where they've deal with these on a higher scale. Why did he put his name on this for a letter of support, if anybody read them? Why did the city of New Smyrna Beach police chief do it? Why did the city of Ormond, Jesse Godfrey, Chief Godfrey, who I work with, he knows. Why did he put his name on the line? Why did the city of Edgewater, Chief Joe Mahoney, put his name on the line? He's the president of the Police Chiefs Association. Why did he put his name on the line? You add up all those years of law enforcement and the reputations and the public that support their train of thought and their way of doing business, and you're going to come up with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. Then you add the state attorneys on, who's the elected by majority, by popularity, the elected chief who's in charge of our law next to the sheriff and prosecution. Why would he support something to this measure? And I'll tell you why. They know it works.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair. Don, one of the things that you said about the issue with the state of Florida and, you know, how come we have so many inmates in custody, you know, overall without the whole state, I can tell you that it's not Volusia County because their count's down. So anyways, but I get that. But I guess I see that as a judicial issue, if there's an issue. It far goes beyond what this council can do as far as why people are incarcerated and why our numbers are so high. And I was along the same lines. You know, it was a little while back that we had an issue that was brought up, and I had contention with the fact that the individuals that wanted that push were not here, and they're not here. So that's another thing. With respect to the question, and that is a good question, Don, that you had about the statistics of those individuals that may have been, and I don't know the answer to that. And we said, Russ, I believe that you had said that we would get those numbers from the sheriff's office. Would that be better ascertained from the state attorney's office? Because other agencies, I mean, there are other agencies other than the sheriff's office. I know the sheriff's office is responsible for registering and reporting for sex offenders and sexual predators, but arrests are made by other agencies other than the sheriff's office.
Yes,
So,
sir, that's correct. We can.
so the
work-
state attorney's office would have been probably,
Either them, or I'm sure the sheriff could get us in touch with the right.
okay, all right, I was just saying, maybe you go right to the source on that. Okay, thank you. And then you talked about the experience and the letters of support for this from those agencies. As a warden, let's add 30 plus years of experience, because it was the hardest thing that I could deal with while I was in charge. Hardest thing I could deal with while I was employed from day one was that type of offense. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilman Johansson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few items here. I'm with Mr. Santiago. I want to move forward, but do so cautiously. We manage risk every day, in my opinion, and there's things we do that we try to control. There's things we do that we don't try to control. I wish we were in a place where everybody can control themselves, but that doesn't happen. There are things that our public asks us to do, or wonders why we hadn't done them after something happens. I take the coastline after the hurricane. I take flooding after a rainstorm. I take death on I-4, speeding where multiple people die. I take fentanyl and opium use. Why are people dying, and why aren't you doing more? So here's an opportunity for us to do a little more before something happens. A couple weeks ago, on the other hand, I asked for stats, because I'm also a return on investment and cause and effect guy. I asked for stats on how many kids have been molested, otherwise acquired in our parks, and all that. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. I know it takes a little bit of time to get that data. I'm looking forward to hearing that. And I also know that we want some return on investment, and we want to, in Don's column, we don't want to disenfranchise totally these people and end up having them out in the woods. That's the last place I want them, because they're a little freer to roam. And having been to one location, I kind of understand why they are where they are. So if we possibly could get to moving forward, if you look at most of our cities, they're at 2,500 feet. So there isn't too many cities where congested areas where these people are migrating. They're going out to the west side, Don. I'm sorry. This is one of the things you get to have on the west side. And so now we further restrict 2 of the 3 places where they're kind of allowed to migrate. I would love that if we could move it up to 1,500 or 2,000 feet, and kind of, I hate to enclave, but make these 3 places like safe havens for these folks. And oh, by the way, I'm sure it helps the sheriff to know that they're all in one place, and he can count heads every once in a while without going, where the heck are they all? My opinion. So I sure would like to move forward with this, understanding that I do not want them out in the woods. That's for sure. So thanks.
Councilman Dempsey.
Yeah, just to kind of answer some of Danny's points. First of all, you got to understand that Sheriff Chitwood and R.J. Larissa are the elected officials. And as I said before, you know, it's not a very politically popular position to take in an election year, trying to show perceived leniency on sex offenders. I don't think Mr. Deering's there, the president, chairman of the REC, he'll tell you how bad I lost that election, because I was talking about this in my campaign when I ran for state attorney. So yeah, it's no wonder that I lost, because again, it doesn't sound, you know, politically correct to say, hey, we need to back off just a little bit on these sex offenders. It's rather get the torches and the pitchforks out and let's get them. That's the politically correct way to get elected or reelected. Let's get them. But the reality of it is that we're actually creating more danger. And the reason this person talked to Russ and I openly at the other meeting I had with Mr. Burball, who I don't think is here anymore, that probation officer brought it up openly about the problems with housing, and that if this passed, we're going to basically have no housing for them on the west side. And I was instructed that they couldn't be here because they were told by their superiors not to show up and speak on behalf of the Department of Corrections. So for fear of losing their job, they couldn't come here and talk openly and honestly, because it's not politically correct to do anything that's remotely perceived as being lenient towards sex offenders. But I can't emphasize enough how many innocent, I believe, through representing these people, and how many, you know, I used to do the intake over on the east side as a prosecutor, and I'd have to discern which of these people who are accused of this scenario with Jeff coming to my house, and oh, I walked in and caught him doing this to my daughter. It's my word against his. It was my job to decide, do I prosecute him or not? No evidence. It's just one person's word against the other. And as the elected state attorney, only I have the decision of whether Jeff faces life in prison or sex offender probation. And it's concerning because there are so many people who are put in that position. Yeah, I mean, the state attorney is going to want to prosecute these cases, in my experience. And so you got more people faced with this. And again, the truly guilty ones. I have a video of Jeff doing this to my daughter. Okay.
Can you use somebody else's name?
Dave. Okay, we'll say Dave. But, you know, those cases are clear, and they're in prison. These are the swearing match cases. These are the ones where it's tough to say no. Because if you tell Dempsey, I'm not going to prosecute that case because you're a nut, Well, I'm going to go on Channel 2 News, get Claire Metz out there, and talk about how the state attorney's office won't prosecute this child molester who molested my kid. There is so much political pressure in these cases, and the political implications of sex offenders, whether to charge them or not, is tough. Thomas Jefferson said, if we're going to go back to our roots, Thomas Jefferson said it's better to let 99 guilty people go free than convict one innocent person. John Adams, who defended the soldiers at the Boston Massacre, when no other colonial attorney would represent them because it was so politically discouraged, they all hated him for shooting these citizens. He said it's more important that we protect innocence than prosecute guilt. That's how much our forefathers were in favor of guilt. Now, could you imagine going and campaigning and saying, I think it's better to let 99 people accused of molesting my kid, let them go, than convict one innocent person? And unfortunately, I think our system, through this tough on crime, we don't like sex offenders, let's just get them, has come to this, where we're forcing them, after the judges have determined them to be fit to walk the streets, we are going to force them to live in the woods. I think that's overstepping our bounds. That's why I'm against this. Thanks.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, members, all the conversation that's happened here today, I remember when we passed the 1,000-foot. I was in the legislature when we did that. So it was an intense debate, as it was here, over there, from all angles. So it's bringing back memories to that. I have, I think, stated my concerns with the motion as it stands, but I think we've beat this horse. Mr. Chairman, I call the question.
Okay, we have one member of the public who'd like to speak to that, John Nicholson.
Yeah. John Nicholson, Daytona Beach side. It's deja vu all over again. Jeff, I liked, and yours, comment on unintended consequences. When Daytona Beach did this, I live on Beachside. It's 8 blocks wide. So you take, a standard block is 500 feet. So you take 3 blocks one way, 3 blocks the other way, and you're left with 1 block in the middle. Okay, and as we're divided, we have Our Lady of Lourdes in the middle, we have Athletics Park in the middle, we have Long Street in the middle. It gives you three blocks. All of those 5 miles, you get 3 blocks. Didn't leave a lot of room. And it left my property line at the end of the 500 feet, or the 1,500 feet. So it left a block behind me. There were 10 houses, 2 of which were converted to apartments. It limits where you can put them. All right? We also had a problem with the adult clubs. We then decided it would be a NIMBY park way out by the jail, and we put all 24-hour dance clubs out there. All right? The problem was that there were no places left for the adult clubs. They brought it to court, and they threw it out. So we got rid of, cost us $1 million, the Total Naked, but then it came back because we were stupid enough to pass a law that prohibited any additional clubs within the city limits except for the NIMBY Park. So unintended consequence, what are we going to do if we say there's no place on the west side? Do you think Daytona Beach is going to be happy? As it stands now, Ponce Inlet can't have them because it's too small. The shores can't. Over by the sea can't. I darn well know that Ormond's not going to volunteer to have them all. All right? So where are we going to put them? The question is, these things happen. So your stats, okay, you're saying that these 15, 20%, 10%, okay, snatch and grabs, whatever, where exactly, and that's what you need to know. Are they in the parks? Where is the snatch? Look at where it happens, and then if you're going to zero anywhere, zero in on where it happens. Know the numbers. You can't sit there and just do something that can come around and bite you in the butt. I'm sorry. It can't come out and hit you in the derriere. Okay? So look very carefully of what you're doing and make sure there's as limited number of unintended consequences as possible. Thank you.
Okay, Carissa, I'm going to ask you to call the roll. This is for 1 and 2, residency restrictions and adoption of the children play area restrictions. Yes, sir.
Chair, excuse me, did you want me to amend the motion for David?
If you care to, he had asked, and
Because, yeah, I can make that amendment to come back with some additional stats. Mr. Santiago, what exactly were you looking for?
Mr. Chairman, can I? Yeah.
please, yes.
I think what was helpful to me was, I was concerned about eliminating housing, multifamily housing. I believe there were 3, whatever that number was, that we would take that out of inventory for new individuals that may be able to go into some of them, because it would eliminate 2 additional ones. So what I was saying is that it would be helpful to me to make my next decision, if the ordinance comes before us to decide, that I would know from a mapping perspective, those particular sites, if they could identify them on the map, and how would that correlate to the distance requirement we're trying to change it to. So just for example, Danny, if I may. So if one multifamily location, we're at 1,400 feet, maybe I can support your proposal later on, and we can amend it maybe to 1,400 feet. I don't want to eliminate that housing stock that the community is already accustomed to, for them to go to, new people.
Right, and I'm with you, but I'm also confused because this doesn't prohibit people from buying a place, you know, that fits this bill, and that's my concern. This may affect the public housing, or not public housing, the rentable housing, which I have a hard time believing that there's only 3, but it doesn't affect the ability for those people to buy a residence or work something out or share a home. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to determine now where you're going, because I'll fall on the sword for this. But I also do want to work with us, but I just have to understand what I'm trying to work towards.
My request is only for data. That's all it is. If you amend for them to give me more data or the council more data, so that when we do vote on it, I can at least consider that data. That's all I'm asking for.
May I just summarize so I think I understand?
Yeah, you need to make sure you understand the data he's requesting.
So for proposal number 1, which includes the registration increase from 1,000 to 1,500 feet, as well as the registration fee part of the ordinance, what I'm hearing is staff prepare an ordinance, if it passes in this motion, with those things in the ordinance as laid out in this presentation, but also come back with the data for the 3, hopefully we can get the 3 addresses of these known locations to see how it's affected by the additional 1,500 feet, which when it's proposed, council may choose to elect to carve the buffer down to allow those residents to continue.
I'm good with that. Absolutely. You got it.
And I just wanted, so as part of this, so you could parse out, if you, depending on what you pass tonight, excuse me, the buffer increase to 1,500 feet could come back separately from the fee registration, because the fee is going to take more time, because we need to do an administrative fee study to support what would be the fees.
So you're going to bring that back anyway?
I can do that.
To bring it all back, yes, sir. But you could bring back one before the other, and so is it council's direction or will to staff to bring it back as we are ready and prepared? This will take some time, so I would ask for council's patience to bring even the registration part back so we can get the data you need. But the residency restriction increased to 1,500 feet to get that data, as well as the registration administrative fee study. That'll take some time. Does that make sense? You could bring it back in 2 parts. You could bring it back together, whatever the will of the council is.
I'd be willing to do that, David. So what he said. 2 motions. 2 motions. I'll make a separate motion for the registration and re-registration fees. And then my 3rd motion will be for the children play areas. Separate.
Chairman, to keep this clean and in my head straight, can we just vote on the first motion and then let Vice Chair tackle the second one? And then we'll come back to the 3rd one, just so we don't get this all mixed up.
Yeah, we're going to have to, because it's just got pretty convoluted.
Thank you.
I think your amendment just went away, and now we've got 3 motions.
I don't know, I don't think so.
I could simplify this real quick.
Okay.
Chairman, my first motion is to take and get Mr. Santiago what he needs in that additional information in terms of how properties are going to be eliminated, and then we'll go from there.
Residency data.
Residency data.
May I make a suggestion? When I hear the first motion is that if the motion is to increase, bring a county ordinance to increase the buffer from the 1,000 feet per the state statute now to 1,500 feet for offenders and predators as an ordinance, with staff providing the additional data of the 3 dwellings as indicated by the probation officer to see where they fall.
Second.
Okay. That's the first motion. Made by David Santiago. Seconded by Jake Johansson.
Can we vote on that one, Chairman?
Yes, please. You want to call the roll?
Just quick discussion.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Is that right? We do discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Just real quick, I mean, these are privately owned apartment complexes or housing, and there's no assurance that they're going to be there 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I mean, we're just counting on the continued benevolence of these people willing to rent to sex offenders when nobody else will. So I don't know how impactful even knowing this data as it applies to these 3 houses is going to carry out for the next 5 years, because they may end up dying and the new owners of the property may not want to rent to sex offenders. And so now we're back in the same position. I just want to make sure that we're aware that there's no guarantee that these places are even going to be available in a year from now.
Thank you. Jake Johansson.
Mr. Chairman, we've all had about 5 bites of this apple. I'd like to call a question, please.
We are. We just let him speak. Would you call the roll, please, on this first residency data motion?
Mr. Kent.
Because of the amendment by Santiago, yes.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yes.
Mr. Robbins.
Yes.
Mr. Santiago.
Yes.
Mr. Dempsey.
No.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes.
Mr. Brower.
No. But it passes 5 to 2. Motion 2.
Motion 2 is to make a motion to do a fee schedule for registrations and re-registrations for sexual offenders, predators, career offenders, convicted felons.
Second.
Yes, sir. Just so for clarity, what I hear is for staff to bring back an ordinance for a registration fee ordinance for those particular items you mentioned, which will include an administrative fee study to support that. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Question?
Okay. Yes, Sonny, go ahead. David Santiago.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Russ. These folks, individuals are already registered with who?
The sheriff, they're required to be registered with the sheriff's office.
So we're going to create a second registration?
This would be a fee to collect for administering the registration part of the statute. So you can collect fees that are reasonable for a service that you provide. So any administrative fees, those types of things that are correct.
I got you. But just to, like.
But you have to support that. So there has to be data behind it.
But they're already registering and they're mandated by state law to register.
Yes, sir. But you can charge a fee for that registration or re-registration.
Right now, they're not collecting a fee.
I guess I'll go into debate. I mean, I don't like fees if we don't need them, and I don't care who's paying them, but I'll talk about that in debate.
Okay. Is there other questions?
Nope. For me, sorry.
Don, Danny, Jake, questions, or are you ready for debate?
I'm ready for debate.
Okay. You want to start debate them?
You know, I don't support the fee, not because I don't want to give government any more money if we don't need it. And that's just been my stance. I think you've seen that's been my MO for the most part since I've been here. These folks are already registered. We have the data. If we implement the ordinance, there's no need to create another layer. I don't want to give government money just because we legally can collect it, regardless of who it comes from.
Vice Chair Robbins.
And Mr. Santiago, I agree with you. But, yes, they're already registering, but there's resources, taxpayer dollars spent on processing those applications, the paperwork, the printer ink, the desks, the computers, the tracking, the man hours. All of this creates a burden on the taxpayer that we, as a council, have the ability statutorily to charge for those services. Right now, we're not charging for it. We're not offsetting the taxpayer burden or the cost that it does, because we do, if we want to talk about looking at ways to reduce burdens on taxpayers, right now, once again, our taxpayers are paying for crimes that they did not commit. We're not charging for it. Statutorily, we can. Once again, we're talking about convicted felons, career criminals, sexual offenders, sexual predators. What those fees may be, it may not be cost effective to do it. It may cost us more, but we don't know. What I do know is that a lot of other counties and a lot of other cities are collecting them for a reason. Why isn't Volusia County?
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair. And that was my point. We're not currently collecting any fees. The Sheriff's Office is not collecting any fees. When they register these individuals, we can go down and we buy our tags. We pay part of that price is for the fee to administratively do that function. We go down and apply for a building permit here in the county. We pay a fee in order to process those permits. Right now, we're currently doing that, but we're not doing it for this. And like Mr. Robbins had said, there's staff and man hours that are being utilized, and we need to offset those costs as a result of it, just like we're doing for everything else. Subsistence fees, exactly. That's all. And we do it. We just recently, or last council, approved for the inmates, because it cost our staff to do that. We won't offset those costs. So right now, the taxpayers that are not guilty of these things are paying for it. They're paying for the Sheriff's Department to register them. They're paying for us to process that paperwork. Those things take time and money. So we're just trying to offset those costs some. I think that's why you said what you said. Thank you.
Councilman Santiago.
Good arguments, guys. Good arguments, guys. I guess to me it would be, this is to come back again, right? To create an ordinance. Yeah. To me, it would be with the fee study to learn what the real cost is associated with this. My reluctancy is always to put any fee if we don't need it. So your arguments, I'll support it. I'll wait till the ordinance comes back and see what the cost is.
Councilman Dempsey.
Well, I was just going to say, we can't overlook the fact that these people do pay court costs, cost of investigation, cost of prosecution, cost of supervision for probation. They pay, I believe it's $50 a month to probation to monitor them. So it's not like the taxpayers are footing the bill for all their supervision. I mean, they do pay. And I would only point out that these sex offenders are given pretty onerous conditions of sex offender probation. It's not like typical probation. So now we're just adding more of a burden to them, which, again, I'm against. Thanks.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair. One more thing, and I agree. I mean, they are paying all those fees to the clerk of courts, who is a elected official. Those fees go to the state or whatever. We're talking about what Volusia County does, that's all. So we don't receive any of that money. So the fees that they're paying, the administrative fees that they're paying the courts for the processing fees or whatever, none of that comes back to offset the cost of what we're doing to register them. It's my understanding, but we'll see more with the fee study. Correct? Am I making sense with that, Russ?
Yeah, so there are certain things that by statute the county is allowed to like get a couple dollars here and there for different costs that come back to the county, certain like law enforcement.
This isn't one of them though.
But we, to my knowledge, do not currently get back money for registration purposes.
Exactly. So the registration is something in that process that is not paid out of court costs and fees. Registration for that, and we'll know more when we do that, but they're offsetting their costs and we're not offsetting ours. That's all. Thank you.
Vice Chair Robbins.
Don, I love you to death. And I always want to start with that because I'm about to blister you, respectfully. But all this stuff has one common burden. It's the taxpayer. I feel like standing up like Moses right now saying, let my people go. Seriously. At what point is enough enough? They get a reduced court cost paid for by the taxpayers. They get a public defender paid for by the taxpayers. Every other thing paid for by the taxpayers, court costs. Line item of cost of investigation. You think $50 or $100 covers the cost of an investigation? We're talking. Some of these things are so time consuming in resources, but who is holding the bag? The taxpayers. Who is footing the bill? When is enough enough? That's my argument. You know, we can argue this stuff to death, but at the end of the day, I believe it's our duty to find relief, especially with people convicted of felonies, convicted career criminals, sexual offenders and sexual predators. I don't think it's asking, or the taxpayers, I don't think it's asking for much.
Okay, no other comments or discussion. The motion is to create a fee, and if you vote yes, you get a second bite at the apple. It's coming back. You will do a fee study first, it'll come back, and then we will discuss it and vote for it again. Carissa, would you call the roll?
Mr. Kent.
No.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yes.
Mr. Robbins.
Yes.
Mr. Santiago.
Yes.
Mr. Dempsey.
No.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes.
Mr. Brower.
Yes. And the motion carries
5-2.
5-2 again. Now we have one more.
It's like speed dating. Never ends without the speed part.
Parks, sir.
Okay. Now, the parks. My motion is for staff to bring back ordinance establishing designated child play areas. Sample language was submitted to make hopefully their job easier. To bring back that in the form of an ordinance for adoption.
Okay. Designated child play areas to have the distance restriction?
Chairman, that's totally different. This child...
So my understanding of the motion is that it would be to designate child play areas so that somebody who's as an adult, 18 or over, that is not accompanied by a minor would not be allowed in the designated play area. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so with that ordinance proposal, staff would also, similar to the administrative fee study, do a cost study, because there will be costs associated with this for notice, putting up signage, those types of things. So we would have some time to bring that back as well.
Absolutely. In the exact language, Chairman, no adult 18 years or older shall enter or remain in designated children's play areas unless the adult is supervising and or accompanying children who are utilizing the designated children's play areas.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Santiago, questions or debate?
Questions.
Okay.
Yeah. These are all tough issues, right? Because you always got to look at the unintended consequences. Russ, I think I know the answer to the question, but I got to ask. I think Councilmember Dempsey asked earlier, do we have any data for Volusia County over the last, 20 years of child-related issues in parks?
I don't have any data like that. I know that there are incidents in parks. I don't know of any child-related data. We'll get that information when we bring.
Okay.
We'll ask the sheriff's office for it or other agencies.
That would be helpful to me, Danny, and I don't know anybody else, because I don't want. Well, that's debate. I'll.
Any other questions for Russ or Danny?
Yes, but I defer to Suzanne. I think she's got some information here.
Mr. Chair, we did receive during your debate this evening a report from the Sheriff's Office. I think Mr. Robbins received it as well. It only looked at Calendar year 2022, it looked at all 63 county-owned parks. That included everything from your traditional park to your fishing dock areas, and provided us crime statistics. We're going through them. As far as sexual crimes on children, there were none reported. There were some sexual offenses, but they did not have, what I'm told, anything to do with any minors. But we're going to review that data, maybe inquire a little bit with the sheriff's office about it. That should also maybe help us prioritize the cameras if we move in that direction to those areas where the highest activities appear to have occurred in 2022.
Thank you. David Santiago. Jake Johansson.
Yes, sir. Russ, I think I know the answer to this, but we talked about fees and to have or have not, and then Mr. Robbins talked about, I don't want my taxpayers paying. Can the fees pay for the signage and the added costs that you just talked to for this proposal? Can there be a correlation to that, or is it apples and oranges?
Well, traditionally, the courts require that the fees related to the service provided. So if the service is provided for the registration, it would have to go to those costs to support that registration, those types of services. So this is a separate,
in the sheriff's department.
Yes, sir. So this, to me, would be a separate. I don't think that those fees could be applied in this situation.
Got it. But we could supplant.
We'll research that.
We could supplant the sheriff's budget and use the money we saved with the registration to now pay for signs, right? What I just want to follow the same line of thought. If we don't want the taxpayers to pay, then I don't want them to pay for this or cameras either. So I want to keep the same thought through these same three proposals, and we'll debate that.
Other questions? Danny Robbins.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll wait for debate.
Alan, did you have a question? Or
yes, question.
Okay.
I mean, well, this is actually of Danny. Are you proposing that these cameras, that's all tied into this motion, right?
No, that's separate, Don.
That's, okay. When we have the cameras, are we talking about preserving?
That's separate, Don. We're talking about the signs in child play areas.
So that's going to be a fourth motion then regarding
however we get there, that's what it's going to be. But right now we're talking about signs.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify for you, Mr. Johansson, that Maureen reminded me is, the fees are about the sex offenders or predators registering. The ordinance proposed now for the parks is not just applicable to sex offenders or predators.
You're right. Yep.
It's
Thanks.
adults
You're right.
18 or over.
I already mentioned it. You're right. Thanks.
Oh, I somehow got taken down.
That it for questions? Okay. Matt Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair. And, well, quick question if I could. I'm sorry. So this is going to, if my wife and I go to a park, she wants to sit down the swing, this is going to be a no-go.
So we had testimony, if you remember, back in June, I think, when Mr. Bailey was here from Parks and Rec and talking about the designated play areas. So traditionally, I believe, and we'll circle back when we bring, if this gets approval and we bring the ordinance back, it's the, what I'll call the foam, like we would designate the areas that have the children's soft ground, I think, is what would be.
Oh, which of this?
So they may or may not include those swings. Like sometimes, I mean, it does sometimes.
It does, some of them, yeah.
Sometimes you have the jungle gym, those different things.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be jumping on jungle gym.
Depends on how each park is set up, and so that's how.
Or I was thinking, and this is, of course, the city of Daytona with the Esplanade. That's different from this because it's not a county park, but a walkway. It's a private park, I know. What I'm saying, though, is if we're walking by a certain area and you happen to walk through there, that's a no-go. You literally could get in trouble for walking through that area where, I mean, I know I'm picking this apart probably too much.
Sure,
but
that's a good question that we would have to craft the ordinance to make sure that we don't criminalize conduct. right? So we still have a constitutional burden to make sure we're not criminalizing innocent conduct. So that would be.
So if she's on the swing and a kid comes up to play, I got to say, all right, let's go. We got to go.
I'm not sure. So in the hypothetical that we're talking about, if it's a designated child area and you're an adult without a minor, you wouldn't be allowed to be in the child designated area, because the idea is that the children are the ones that the equipment is made for. That's generally the concept that the courts talk about,
Okay.
designated area for the children.
Okay. Kid at heart, I guess, you know.
Okay, questions, Troy Kent?
Yeah, thank you, because Councilman Reinhardt, you're spot on. I'm thinking, Russ, I'm thinking about two 18-year-old young adults, or we'll call them kids, still in high school. And they go to a park and they're swinging on swings. What are we doing with this? So, you know, that's a huge concern of mine.
Question is Danny Robbins.
I thought we moved on to debate.
I got a question.
No, we're still working on questions.
Oh, but I can help.
You have a question?
I'll wait.
Okay. Jake for questions? Don Dempsey for questions.
Just to confirm, Russ, we have not had one allegation of any children being abducted from a playground in this county at all. Yet we are now saying that we are going to protect the children in a playground where there's never even been an abduction from a playground. Am I correct in this reasoning?
I have no knowledge of a child being abducted from a playground in Volusia County, but I'm not I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. Now we'll open it up for debate. Vice Chair Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carissa, I sent you a video. It should be in your email. I just sent it just a few moments ago. It's a video of the sheriff's office recently. I think just a few months ago, there was an op doing where they arrested 24 or 27 males for lewd and lascivious, pulling out their organs and doing things that they shouldn't have throughout our parks. I'd like you to go ahead and play that. While you're getting that up, I want us to keep in mind here, these are just like speed limit signs, right? They're a deterrence to make these sick individuals think twice about doing this stuff in and around our kids inside parks. Just like a speed limit sign. Does it stop them? No. But they think twice. This is an added measure. And this is officer discretion. Now, as an officer, we're trained when we encounter somebody to process exactly what's going on. And this is for very child-specific equipment. I'm not saying put this all in the swings and everything that's a common area for adults. This is around these rubber-padded parks where they have monkey bars, where they have these slides that go down like they have at Karachi Park that are encased in rubber. So these toddlers in these, I'd say up to about 12 years old, are going to congregate. But all this stuff is tailored very narrow in scope, and it's very target specific in what it does. We can say, what if about all these abductions and whatnot, and act as if none of this, but these crimes are led up. All this stuff is built up crimes. Don, you know that. This just doesn't happen overnight. This is a mental disorder. This is a sickness. It's to deter these people, and we better thank God that there hasn't been an abduction, is because of the work of our law enforcement, keeping their thumb on this stuff, doing these ops. But this video right here is going to prove that this stuff exists, it's live and well in Volusia County, and we need to do every measure and take every measure to take this away. To me, there's no argument here. Carissa, thank you.
Go, go, go.
turn and face that way. Alright. You got anything on you you're supposed to have? No. Okay, cool. Do you have a wallet, ID at all?
What's that? I can vape.
Okay. Anything? Hey, walk him out.
I'm not doing anything. I'm right here.
Afternoon, sir. How are you? Good. How you doing? Yeah, Sergeant Wilton, Sheriff's Office. Hop out. Turn around, face the car. Put your hands behind your back. You weren't doing anything? You weren't masturbating in your car? No? So the deputies in the unmarked police car that was parked next to you watching you didn't see you masturbating in your car? No? Okay. Well, you are being placed under arrest for it. So, if you decide you want to change your story or give your side of it, I'm here for it, all right?
Now, with that being said, once again, we are taking this option away from these people. They don't have to be a predator. They don't have to be an offender. What they are is they're creeps doing this every day in and amongst our kids. Now, for an added protection with this, once again, I hit on there is an appeal process that we have already adopted for trespass. You know, and my recommendations for this are as follows. And all these concerns are valid. But if law enforcement contacts you, I want our law enforcement to have the ability to not just have a consensual encounter where these people can say, hey, I'm not talking to you. I want to take that away. I want our law enforcement to have the ability to identify these people that are supposed to be in there, at a minimum, to identify them. So now we can start saying, because these crimes are built up, so we can start looking at it and saying, hey, this is a pattern with this guy. He hangs out in these parks. Maybe we need to watch him a little bit closer as a preventative measure. Okay? From there, they're put on notice. Hey, this is unacceptable. They have knowledge with a sign around very child-specific area, a very delicate area where those kids need to be kids and not worry about people masturbating next to them or in their line of sight or on a county property. Also, there's a trespass warning. All that, once again, 78-4 covers it in our Code of Ordinances already. After that, almost like 3 strikes, you're out. If they come back and do this again, or are inside that again, that is a pattern. There's no mistake in that. Then a fine or a fee for their violation will be imposed. You know, so this isn't, to me, this is so common sense, it's unbelievable. And I'm trying to swallow a lot of this argument, although it's a valid argument. I just disagree with it. And this stuff is real, and it's alive and well in Volusia County. And once again, this is taking the measures or an additional measure to protect our kids.
Councilman Johansson.
Yeah, I'm reading the proposal ordinance language, and I want to make sure I'm clear. So I guess this is almost a question, but no adult 18 years or older shall enter or remain in a designated children's play area, Matt's wife, unless the adult guardian, sibling, caretaker, parent, babysitter, daycare provider, teacher is supervising or accompanying children. So Matt's wife can come in with a kid, but can't come in alone. Is that correct? All right. So, and from a law enforcement perspective, how is this signage that we're going to put on the parks, the foam padded playground areas, how is that going to more empower our police to do what you just said?
Chairman?
And
why don't you go ahead and finish up, Jay.
Okay. And so I'm for this. You know where I came from. I talk to police chiefs all the time, and so we have the list of names of frequent flyers in Port Orange, and I'm sure every city has them. I'm sure the sheriff has frequent flyers that they're looking out for, guys and gals who are always patterns of, well, heck, we probably got code enforcement too that does the same thing. How does this, I guess I want to make sure that this gives them some additional grounds to be more restrictive to people in general. And I read it, Danny, from a normal person's perspective. You know, I see moms waiting for their kids to come out of the restroom all the time. That could be loitering around restrooms, dressing rooms, bathhouses. I know what you're thinking of, but I'm thinking of the mom waiting for the teenager or the 12-year-old girl that's modest to come out of the restroom by herself. So I don't want that unintended consequence, but I want to meet your needs as well. So that's my conundrum right now.
So, and thank you, Jake, that's a great question. How will it empower the police? Right now, if you do or walk up to somebody and you have nothing, no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause, that individual, you and I, can say, hey, get on up the road. I'm not talking to you. I don't have to give you my ID. I don't have to tell you where I live. Nothing. Bye. Right? If these people are inside these designated child play areas, and we're only looking at one aspect of this right now in terms of the offender or these lowlifes, I want our police and our law enforcement to be empowered to have, to take away the fact that they can be told in these specific areas to go take a hike. I want them the ability to legally identify this person that's in there. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Hey, if they're good, send them on their way. You FI'd them, send them on their way. And educate them. That's what this is about, education. At the least, out of anything that we get out of this, it's going to bring awareness and education to this problem. Because it is a problem. So it's going to give our law enforcement another tool in their tool belt to identify these people. Number two, your homeless, your transients. I don't know if anybody's been to any parks lately throughout the county. They're overrun. Go to a public library. They're overrun with the transient population. And that's a whole nother story. But the public health aspect of this, do we want these folks setting up shop underneath these playgrounds? Because they do all the time. And there's trash everywhere. There's feces at times. I've seen them. I've stepped in them. That's a cop. Okay? This creates a better scenario where those people aren't loitering, setting up camp, setting up shop overnight. They're not sitting there drinking their Mad Dog 2020 and hanging out. All this stuff. So you have a public health issue that this addresses as well. And also, too, do we want adults, the 400-pounder, sorry, to say it the way I'm going to, but on a children's equipment, breaking that equipment or damaging it, someone else getting hurt on it, and then the taxpayer has to replace it. So this catches a lot of areas, and we, really, we want people using things the way that they were intended. We want to make sure it's clean, it's safe, it's free of trash, it's free of booze, it's free of feces. I don't want these kids needing a tetanus shot to go play at the park or the splash pad. And I want these people that do these lewd and lascivious acts away from these areas. So hopefully that clarifies my stance on things.
Councilman Dempsey.
Matt, does your wife need to cut down on the carbs? Is she one of those 400-pounders that Danny was talking about?
Actually, he's in a lot of trouble.
I was going to say. Danny, I'll reiterate, I love you, and I know your intentions are good, and as a fellow parent of a 6-year-old little girl, I share with you the desire to protect our kids. But we are creating criminals out of innocent conduct. Those videos, I know exactly, that was Gemini Springs, wasn't it? Because, like I said at the last meeting that we had, when we were talking about putting those tents on the beach, and I told you guys, I said, that's not the problem, it's your bathrooms that are the problem. I've prosecuted Edstone Park, Valentine Park. I've had cases involving Gemini Springs with this type of activity going on. Masturbating in cars has been going on. I've had people driving the streets of Stetson doing that stuff. And I'm telling you, it happens. I didn't see one playground in those videos. Well, it's a park and a playground is a different thing, okay? That was in the woods of Gemini Springs. I'll bet you dollars to donuts that's where that video came from. Because that's a known place for those type of people to congregate and have their relations, okay, amongst themselves. We just saw guys getting handcuffed. We don't know what that person did that got handcuffed. I didn't see any kids in the picture. I didn't see any kids in the car with that person masturbating. That wasn't in a playground. So that just goes to prove my point. This stuff happens everywhere. So now to sit here and just say, okay, playgrounds, no more going to your park. What about the people that do CrossFit? What about the people that jog at these parks and then they want to go on the monkey bars and do their pull-ups and their exercises? Now we're going to criminalize those people. And because this is a sexually geared towards type offense, now they're going to become sexual criminals because this has a sexual connotation to it that you're hanging out in a children's playground. So you must be up to just molesting kids and no innocent conduct. I mean, we don't even have one confirmed incident. There's not one. In 33 years of doing this, I've never heard of one incident where it's been done on a playground. I've seen the bathroom cases. I agree with you. If we could put cameras in the bathrooms, absolutely, because that's where a lot of this type of activity takes place, and that's a danger, and that's why as a parent, I would never let my kid go into a bathroom by themselves. You know, and if we're going to say that it's, well, I won't go there, but I mean, how many responsible parents are letting their kids go to the playgrounds unsupervised? I mean, should we criminalize the parents who let their kids go to the playgrounds unattended? I mean, as a parent, you have a duty to watch out for your kids. So now, should Matt's wife be the criminal out of this hypothetical, or should it be the parent who lets their kids just go and go wherever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and they're unsupervised? You know, so again, I don't see any rational basis. And as far as giving the police a tool to make them talk, I mean, this is kind of law school 101, is the county cannot undo the Fifth Amendment, right to remain silent. The county can't undo the Fourth Amendment protection from illegal search and seizure from the government. I mean, while we're at it, let's just go ahead and impose gun control while we're up here. Let's just ban all guns in Volusia County, or let's just ban free speech. And let's get rid of the First Amendment too in Volusia County. As long as we're here doing away with constitutional protections, let's just do away with them all. Let's get rid of jury trials. Let's get rid of, I mean, come on. You're talking about stripping citizens of their right to remain silent? Boy, that's got deeper implications than I think that's the unintended consequence. We can't do it. I don't think the first appeal on that would probably be reversed because it's, you know, attempting to do away with people's Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment protections. So, again, with all due respect, I respect you. I know you did a lot of homework in this. I know your intentions are good, but we cannot, I mean, we got to stay focused on where the problems are, and let's not strip people of their constitutional rights. We can't do it anyway. All right, thanks.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Chair. So the first and second motion that we made, I'm all-time big supporter of because it does, I mean, that keeps those offenders and predators away from the parks. So they shouldn't be there to begin with, based on the first two. And I agree with you 100% as far as our transient population. Say a lot of them are not sex offenders or sexual predators, and yeah, they do set up camps. When I was working in New Smyrna, they were all through there. Most of them didn't set up the camps, though, at the swing set area. They did it under a pavilion near the bathroom because they can utilize the bathrooms. That's not what this is addressing, correct? This is addressing the actual play area or the padded play area. So, and I utilize, first off, I'm in a lot of trouble when I go home for bringing my wife up into this. So,
You're going to sleep in a park tonight.
You know, and full disclosure, we did an event back when my mother was alive, and we were doing an event, and she'll attest to this. And my daughter was, I want to say 17 at the time, I hope. So she was 17 at the time, and she and we had to have that father-daughter conversation about, you know, the kid that I don't like, and the boy, you know, and we go off and we sit on the swings. Now, what if she was a year older? Again, it's my child, but she's 18 years of age. And so I'm having that conversation with her. I'm just saying, what if? And there's no other kids there. We were having a conversation. We're sitting on the swings. No, I'm not 400 pounds, Danny. So I have put on a few pounds. Thanks for noticing. But that being said, you know, we sat there and we had this discussion. And what if she was 18? You know, and then this law or this ordinance, the way it would be written, if she was and a child came up, I'd have to tell her, we need to stop because there's a kid here now on the swing and we have to leave and go have our conversation elsewhere. That's what I'm saying. Again, let me go back to the first statement I made. The first and second motion that we approved or will come back to us, first one really, will keep the sexual offenders and predators away from the parks to begin with. Correct? So that being said, they shouldn't be there to begin with where we have to worry about them being on the swing set. I don't know, unless I'm wrong, but that's all I got. Thank you.
Councilman Kent.
Thanks, Chairman. My first comment is to Councilman Dempsey, just because my feelings are a tad bit hurt. You have voted against everything I have brought forward this first 9 months we've been together. No to dogs on the beach. No to the change to the Ocean Center. No to not making them spend an extra $20 to drive on the beach. And you've never once told me, I love you, Troy, like you've told Danny. You're telling Danny you disagree with him, but man, I love you, Danny. And then I'll get a little more serious and just say, everyone has their own style. Say whatever you want. You're up here, you know, we gotta own our words. But anytime I hear this is a no-brainer, this is common sense, well, I guess if I disagree with you, then it's a no-brainer. I mean, I was wrong, or, you know, I don't have common sense because you're right and I'm wrong. I take offense to that. No, I do. It turns me off. I know you didn't. And I'm not saying any names. I'm just saying it does. But I'm thinking about, and Matt, I'm going to use you because you've talked about it. But who knows where you and your wife met? Maybe you all had children and you met at a park. And you all ended up, I'm not going to say what he said. I'll let him say it. But let's say you did meet at that park. And then, you know, on your 10 or 20 or 30-year anniversary, you all go back there. And Don, I think you said it best. We're criminalizing innocent behavior. And I think about those two 18-year-old seniors still in high school who we're going to criminalize them going to a public park and swinging on a swing, or God forbid they want to go down the slide. You know, maybe they're 18 and they're not 400 pounds, right? And they want to enjoy the amenities that we have in our county. You said it best. We're criminalizing innocent behaviors, and I'm not okay with that.
Vice Chair Robbins.
Thank you, Chair, and I respectfully disagree. But a lot of the stuff where we can take offense and what we can also say is, I'm not going to go there. But at the end of the day, if this was unconstitutional, not tried and true, why are other municipalities and counties doing this throughout the state of Florida? Why? We have a duty to take every possible measure. And Don, you know, to me, to put it in a way that you did, as if we're creating laws to just put people in jail, that's a weak argument. And why don't we just stop enforcing everything? Why don't we just have a lawless society and protect nobody? Why not? Let's get rid of speed limit signs. Let's get rid of every other law in the book. at the end of the day, this picture that's being painted, I just disagree. It's false. That this stuff doesn't have an impact or a positive impact. And I disagree with the fact that we have police chiefs, sheriffs, and state attorney throughout the county that do this every day, that agree with it. You know, it's hard to swallow, but I'm trying. I'm trying to find a happy medium here. But I just think, Don, that the picture that you're painting is absurd. And we're losing track of what the whole point of this is. So, you know, that's all I got for now. Chairman, well, we already have a motion on the floor.
Councilman Santiago.
This horse is dead. Call the question.
Okay, yeah, I agree, Don. We have one member of the public who wants to speak, but my final comment is I wish that on all of these it would be so easy just to say yes and vote them, because it's almost, and I know you don't intend it this way, but it's almost like it's a gotcha. If you vote against this, then you're not for keeping people safe. I think that our main purpose in government is to protect people's God-given, constitutionally protected rights. When I look at all of these, I have to ask myself, does this increase protection? I don't think it does. Does it increase the chances of stripping somebody of their rights? And I say yes, it does. I'd have to agree with Don on that. So I'm done. Yes, go ahead.
A point of order, Mr. Chair.
What is your point?
The point is, when there's a call for the question is not debatable, it's actually to go to the question. I love everybody here. We all been at Lugfest. We're beating this horse. We heard where everybody has to be. And you've made some good arguments. Don't ruin them. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. I am going to call the member of the public who wanted to speak, Phyllis Stauffenberg.
I have a friend that has a granddaughter that goes to school in New Smyrna Beach. She's the grandmother, and I know the grandfather as well. They're very reputable people. They're very credible people. Their granddaughter was harassed repeatedly throughout the school year last year by a maintenance man in the school. The grandparents went to the principal. They went to the superintendent. They went to the board, the school board, and could not get any kind of resolve on this. Eventually, that person, and he wouldn't leave her alone, he kept on her to the point where she didn't want to go to school. Her grades were dropping. She was having a difficult time, and still to no avail with the officials. They finally caught the guy, and he's no longer working at the school. On another occasion, there was a little girl, 8 years old. She was taken off her porch. She was at her aunt's house. She was waiting for a bus to go to a Wednesday night church meeting. She was taken by the aunt's friend. She was assaulted, raped, murdered. Her name was Sabrina Stauffenberg. It didn't matter, and I sent out a couple of pictures to several of you board members. I've never talked about it before, but I feel like you need to know. Doesn't matter where those cameras are. Doesn't matter if they're there. It doesn't matter if you have no trespassing signs anywhere. If they want them, they're gonna get them. And they're going to prey on them like animals. And there's not anything you, I, or anybody else can do about it. Just like they're going through a court right now in Delphi, Indiana, with the two little girls that had a cell phone with a videoing camera and videoed and used the camera to take pictures of their murderer that kept saying, down the hill, guys. 5 years it took them to find him. He's now going to court. It doesn't matter how much you pay. It doesn't matter all the procedures that you take and the guarding that you do. The best thing you can do as parents, grandparents, friends, babysitters is supervise the children and watch the children, no matter where they go, no matter what they do. They're dependent on you, on me as guardians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Krista, I'm going to ask you to call the vote on the designated child play areas, no adults without a child if they're 18 years or older.
Mr. Kent?
No.
Mr. Reinhardt?
No.
Mr. Robbins?
Yes.
Mr. Santiago?
No.
Mr. Dempsey?
No.
Mr. Johansson?
No.
Mr. Brower?
No, and the motion does not pass 6-1. Is there one more motion on this?
Chairman, I think we have a better chance of seeing God than anything else passing.
You haven't seen him yet?
No, still looking. But I'm going to go ahead and hold off on the cameras for now. I'm going to collect a little bit more information and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one thing, if I could, Chair. I'm sorry, and then we'll. It's
No,
in light of
go
that.
ahead.
When we do come back with that, because I know we can't work outside the confines of this board here, because I brought that up a long time ago about parks, the cameras in the parks, when we talk about doing the phones, which was something we were going to piggyback on with the sheriff's office also. So I know that that is in the works. I don't know if this kind of expands that. You know, it was something I brought up probably February or March that I know that we're still working on. So, and the cameras were part of it because of the phone, the emergency phones, because I wanted cameras on those as well. So,
Chairman, may I real quick?
Yes, Vice Chair Robbins.
I received some data a little while ago in terms of the cost. I haven't had a proper time, just so the council knows, to review it, and also to, you know, with the funding source of ECHO, what I can do is I think I can handle a lot of this behind the scenes to not, you know, take up any unnecessary time. So when the time is fitting, I'll come back. I'll lay it out for you guys. If it's something you're interested in, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to item 5.